very important topic which you have suggested. Mediators as leaders and leaders as mediators. So, of course, you know the drill, your introduction, and then please take it forward.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity again. I feel like I'm becoming almost a weekly occurrence, you and I chatting. It's fantastic. And you know what? It's great about it is that as mediators, it just gives us time to reflect and grow our profession and stretch our learnings and understandings. So thank you again. Talking about mediators and leaders as mediators. A little bit of background for those of you that don't know me. I'm a conflict strategist and mediator. I'm second generation practitioner, and I've been doing this mediation work for 26, 27 years now. I got my teeth into the game doing neighbourhood disputes, so noisy neighbours, barking dogs, and now I do whole of community cross-cultural work. I work with boards and corporations, and increasingly I work with leaders. And I work with leaders who are really struggling to deal with complex conflict, with messy people problems, and making good decisions when there's a lot of confusion around. And so I thought this topic of mediators and leaders as mediators might be a useful one for us as a profession, both because I see such opportunities for this sort of work in a corporate commercial space, but also more importantly, I passionately believe that our world needs more peacemakers and that it's peacemakers that will help us go forward. And as we see our borders closing down in some ways in terms of this world getting smaller, us connecting more, but we also see division and disputes increasing. We see global conflicts, intra and interstate conflict impacting people and people's lives, that we are going through a period of change. We are going through a period where people's values and expectations are changing, where what people think is normal is perhaps different to what it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. What's acceptable has changed. And during times of change, conflict occurs. It brings to the surface uncertainties and confusion. And I think that the capacity of society in general to navigate those hard conversations, I don't think a lot of people know how to do it anymore. They've forgotten and lost this art of talking through differences and holding a space that can be confusing. So I think for me, I passionately believe that mediators have a very strong role to play as peacemakers globally. And now it starts not just from an interstate conflict perspective, as I'm sure some of your fantastic speakers, Vikram, have often talked about, but it also starts right down at a local community level. And as mediators, we can all play a role to help those around us engage in more productive conversations. So I think, and I want to challenge everyone on this topic, and as mediators to, in your reflections on whether it's this session or moving forward, to think about what leadership role you can each take on. And it doesn't have to be in lights and fancy, but each of us can make a difference to the lives of the community around us. And why do I think that? Well, let's talk about, I guess, the incentive of why this is so important. We know in Australia, for instance, 70% of people avoid dealing with conflict in the workplace. It's costing Australian workplaces, in workplace stress alone, $10.11 billion a year. In the UK, conflict cost employees £28.5 billion annually. In the US, conflict is costing companies $359 billion annually.
Wow.
This is a lot of money that goes into conflict unresolved, conflict avoided, conflict impacting productivity, relationships, reputations, growth, innovation. So the need for us to do this better is evidenced not just in our relationships, but in the bottom dollar line. Mediation skills, the capacity to manage emotions and manage conflict isn't just a soft skill. It's actually the hardest work we will all do. So there's a real need for us to be leaders. But there's this interesting dynamic. For those of you that have been doing mediation for a long time, you would know our role is to hold a process. Our role is to bring people together and manage their conversation. They hold authority in decision making. They hold authority to resolve the matters. There's a challenge with that then. As mediators, how do we step into our own power to influence change? And I think for many in my industry, and I've seen this over the years, that mediators, particularly without a legal background, aren't so good at selling the story of mediation, of taking on that leadership role. I think because we're used to pushing others in front themselves, we're used to empowering others. And that is really what mediation has been about. It's facilitating others to make good decisions. But this world needs mediators and peacemakers, and it needs us to step out and into this space and own our full capacity to influence and guide and shape decision making. So I think particularly non-legal mediators, we need to learn to own our own authority beyond the mediation room. There's a caution though, because I don't want every mediator to think they then go out and control the mediation processes they do. I'm just saying that the skills that we've inherited, that we've fostered, that we've enriched through our practice are greatly needed. And so let's distinguish the role of the mediator in the mediation process from a mediator being a leader. And so as a mediator with the potential to influence change, with a skill set to help bring people together and make wise decisions, I think this is so critical. Quincy Adams talks about leadership as being, it's your actions, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. And I resonated with this quote for this talk because as mediators, as peacemakers, wouldn't it be so powerful if we took that notion of leadership and spread the word of what we do? That we inspired others to dream beyond conflict, that we inspired them to see conflict not as something to be fearful of and to avoid, but something of an opportunity. But people can't get there on their own because they're so fearful and unfamiliar with managing conflict. We need to help them dream more. We need to help them learn more, because the skills we all learn as mediators around the conflict dynamics, around what causes it and how people respond and how you make good decisions in this space are skills that not everyone gets taught. In fact, very few people have the confidence and understanding to step into these places. So we need to make learning accessible. We need to make learning these things something for everyone, not just for the those with a law background, and not just for mediators, but something that everyone else can connect with and resonate. And as mediators, we do need to do more, and we can do more. We can share our stories and positive examples. We can get our hands dirty and take leadership roles in our communities, on boards and in organisations, because our skill set is so unique to good decision making. We have eyes and ears and hearts that are alert to the signals of what it means to make wise decisions. But we have to be courageous enough to step up and into our authority. In my work in East Arnhem Land, I was involved in a project called Mile Rom. And this project was negotiated over a year or so before it even got off the ground. And the project was able to identify that mediation was a bridge that crossed both cultures. And so the mediators could recognise that the skills of the mediator were valuable to a leader. And the elders in Arnhem Land recognised that for them, the leader is also a mediator. You can't disentangle the skills of the mediator from those of a leader. And a good leader is able to navigate conflict, is able to navigate people together, even in the hard moments. And so I think that as mediators, we have the potential to be leaders, but we also have the potential to teach leaders to be better at dealing with conflict. So it's a twofold approach to how we peacemake in this world. And it requires a shift in our mindset. And so I guess that's what I was really curious about as professionals, how we shift our mindset from they focus on a narrow process, which is valuable and is important. But how do we take that with a strategic view? How do we then start to shape the global interactions of good decision making in a way that brings heart and peace to our interactions with each other? I'm just going to press pause for one moment, Vikram.
Yeah, after then I'll put the screen up. Yeah, please. Hello. He can't hear me for sure. He's the one who's not well. So this session is part of the conference. So, Sarah, what I'm doing is I'm just talking about the conference because there was
Yes.
Martha in the session on neurodiversity and mediation. So she's autistic. And I was saying, can we become more sensitive to people? So she said, look, we need to be prepared. So you should tell us what this is all about, because you know how I start. I just start straight away. So I said, I should have done it right in the beginning, but of course you don't have too much time. So I went straight for this. So this is the conference, World Mediators Conference, 18th May to 30th June. The inaugural address was on 18th May by Ken Cloak. Recording is available. This session is the 14th session in it, which is mediators as leaders and leaders as mediators, and a very important session. And Sarah has suggested the topics. So that's what this is all about. Yep, please.
Thank you. And thank you for, I think this happened last time as well. My 6-year-old loves to come in and say hello. He's currently sick today. It's been a joy. It's been hard work with him around, but I think that's also us being leaders around how we engage and recognize that. And we respond to those challenges we deal with. And I think, I don't know about you, Vikram, but I'm certainly seeing a shift in society around what leadership means to people. Here in Australia, certainly from the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, recognition of First Nation Indigenous people's rights, there's been a real groundswell of people saying we need to engage with people differently. We need our leaders to really listen, and we need to value and bring into the piece of decision-making our diversity. And in a world where our differences have been used to divide us, and where our differences have been used to prop up and maintain power for the few, I think that what we are seeing is a real shift. And I think people are ready for that shift. People are looking for a different style of leadership, a leadership or a leader that does grow productivity and growth, but also understands the people around them, that can take people on a journey, that can create change and make wise decisions, and do so in a way that brings people with them instead of using intimidation and manipulation. I think those sort of leaders, in a sense, are seen as coming from, in a way, a bygone era. I feel like we're shifting. The consciousness is shifting around what's okay and what's not. And so it is a period of upheaval as we wait with bated breath to see what lands. But I think that we are seeing people search for leaders who display some of these characteristics. Leaders that listen well. Leaders that know how to collaborate and work with lots of different people. Leaders who can also make hard decisions, but hard decisions that are justified and lay out the reasons why. These are leaders who can deal with difference with respect and aren't afraid of the hard conversations. These are leaders that create vision and tell people a story in a way that connects with them. It's really about leaders that have both the professional skills in their technicalities, but also understand people and the capacity to bring people together. And so I think as a society, we are saying we're ready for that change. What you're probably not surprised about then is those skills that I listed are all skills that we as mediators cultivate. They're all skills that we are attuned for and listen to. A recent research done by Stanford Business School indicated that nearly 43% of the CEOs they interviewed rated conflict management skills as their highest priority for development. Takes us full circle back to leaders as mediators and mediators as leaders. These skills and capacities to navigate confusing and conflicting times of crisis. How do you deal with this? So we know from an international perspective, mediators and mediation is leading the charge to facilitate complex negotiations, peace talks, environmental change, sustainability, diversity, First Nations rights. Vikram, all the topics that you're talking about in this conference cover those big topics, but they also cover the big topics in little practical ways that people are making a change in their own little spaces. And these are people that are showing leadership with the courage to share their stories and inspire others to say, hey, take these skills, these core processes of mediation and apply them where they matter to you. And show the way and help people negotiate effectively, help people make wise decisions and problem solve in a really multidisciplinary perspective. This is a lead to focus on problem solving and not blame. And this is what mediators bring to the table. And as I said, it is a mindset shift because I see so many mediators really wrestle with, how do I put myself out there? How do I take a step up and share a story? So I thought it would be useful, Vikram, to share a little bit again about, I guess, my own perspective on what being a leader means to me in this industry. And so probably about 15 years ago, I just felt this bubbling frustration inside that I kept on getting called in to deal with conflicts that other mediators had gone in and done and hadn't done a particularly good job at. They were well-intentioned, but they hadn't listened to people. And then I got really sick of hearing their stories of these people who I knew weren't doing a particularly great job. And they were the stories in the media. They were the stories getting praised. And then I got to thinking, well, the people that I respect that are doing really good work are so busy doing that really good work, we don't hear their stories. These are the people making a difference on the ground. And they're so busy doing it, they don't have time to self-promote. They don't have time to share their stories with the world. They don't have time to influence the broader strategic decision-making. And so I said to myself, how can I whinge and complain and blame when I'm also doing the same thing? I'm not sharing my message. I'm not stepping up and giving people an alternative. And so I made this very conscious decision that wherever an opportunity arose for me to speak out, to take on some leadership or take responsibility for the broader, bigger picture, that I would say yes. As uncomfortable as it was. And I tell you, when I was getting started, my tummy would churn when I had to step into these rooms, or the first time that I got interviewed on radio. It doesn't come naturally for me. I'm not naturally an extrovert. I'm actually naturally an introvert. So I had to teach myself and train myself the capacity to have clarity in the messages that I'm delivering. And in doing so, in walking the talk, I think that it enables me then to show leadership. And I hope that I feel that responsibility to make this path easier for those that come behind me, and hope that they overtake me and fly even higher than I've ever reached. And that's that intergenerational change, that's doing our little piece to the puzzle to help bring more peace to this world, to help say, hey, we can come together. We can wrestle with really complex decisions, with messy situations, and we can do this work to reach good decisions, even if it seems hopeless. Sometimes it just takes a little bit longer. So for me, that was my mindset shift that really fundamentally shifted not just how I practiced, but how I was delivering my message bigger and wider. It was connecting with that strategic view about, why am I doing this work? Why does this really matter to me? and then finding ways of how can I best influence change. And I do that now still. So I'll always ask myself, because we're all busy, right? Getting pulled in a million and one directions. And so my challenge now is I always say, am I able to influence change in what I'm doing? Is this use of my time able to make a difference, or is it just making it harder? And is there a spark of joy in what I do? Because I'll need that to keep going. So those three questions help refine the delivery of my leadership and how I spend my time so that it becomes possible and not overwhelming. So I'm really passionate about how we as mediators step into leadership, not for self-gain, but for the benefit of this world. It's a very big dream. It's a very big aspiration, but I just feel so deeply in my bones that as mediators, we are critical to this world moving forward, that this world needs us. It needs us because we can listen in a really unique way. It needs us because we can hold those complex spaces together. We can bring difference together. We can negotiate what it means to sit under the tree, that we are the ones that have honed this art. And it needs us because in our listening and in our negotiating, that we also know what it means to make wise decisions. I don't know about you, but you can feel in yourself when other parties reach that place of, that's a really good decision. I can just feel the depth of the strength of what you're deciding. So we know, we can see it and we can feel it. So then by us living the talk, we then become responsible for also doing the same ourselves. If we can see it in others, we can learn to do it ourselves. And that's what we need to be spreading and sharing and making sure we're authentic in what we do. That mediation and the process and the skills isn't just a tick on a piece of paper, but we're out there in the trenches, walking through that mud, taking a step-by-step process to live this task of making wise decisions during times of conflict and change. I'm really passionate too about mediators as leaders and leaders as mediators, particularly from a gender perspective. As a female involved in peacemaking and in my industry, particularly in Australia, it's an industry at the top end predominantly dominated by men. And I think it's really important that women's voice and influence and capacity to be good peacemakers is equally represented. But I also know in communities that are dealing with high levels of conflict, it's those communities in which women are empowered that best navigate towards peace, that are best able to help their communities find some solutions. It's the communities that have disempowered their women, or their women are silenced and they can't speak up anymore. These are the communities in crisis, that they are unable to move forward. And so I know how powerful it is for women to be empowered as leaders and to know how to navigate these spaces. And most strong women have all the capacity in them already. Sometimes they just need to be given a chance, or maybe just a frame around what to do. But I also know in the corporate space, many women often assume that to be a strong leader means emulating the masculine style of leadership. And for me, I want to say, for any women listening out there, the greatest power you can find is finding your own leadership voice, whatever that looks like. But it doesn't have to be replicating something else. You know, I think that women can find a powerful, strong leadership style of their own when they have the confidence to navigate conflict. Because too many women get nervous about stepping up into that boardroom and asking questions and calling out behaviour, or they do so in a way that is aggressive and puts people offside. The real skill of a mediator leader is someone that can listen well, bring forth their ideas and do it in a way that doesn't disempower others. When you box people into a corner, they're going to come back fighting. So as mediators and leaders, we know and we learn how to manage those emotions in the room really well. And so we need to empower more women, I think, with the confidence to be able to step up and do that. Really, this world needs more balance in us as peacemakers and leaders. And it's our capacity to listen and to work together. As I said, this is not a soft option of leadership style. This is a leadership style that actually requires us to work the hardest. Sorry. But it is the task of working towards peaceful solutions means digging deep. It means holding your authenticity deeply and grounded so it informs everything that you do. And in doing that, as a leader, you will actually find you start to influence more widely because people will listen. They will read in you an inner confidence and a capacity to hold that space. Your ability to hold people calm and focused helps them make decisions, and in doing so leads the way. So we as mediators and mediators as leaders bring a whole pile of skills to this task of leadership. We create clarity, we create process, we help reduce the overwhelm. We have eyes to alert for the impact of silos and factions in conflict. We understand that poor or delayed decision-making is not a good thing. We know the inconsistencies or the impacts of bias and assumptions. And we know that competition and an inappropriate power dynamics doesn't create good outcomes. It just creates more friction. So, full circle, mediators as leaders, leaders as mediators. This is a conversation that I want us all to be having as mediators. And when I Googled the topic and to see what resources were out there, there was a lot of lovely soft articles that talked about how mediator skills can be really useful for leaders. But I want to challenge us all that we all have an opportunity to be leaders ourselves. And the world needs us to do so. I want you to put aside the mediator hat sometimes and think to yourself, how can I take responsibility more broadly for creating a more peaceful community, workplace, or world? And what's one thing that I might be able to do to help create change?
Sarah, that was lovely. That's what I do know. Whenever Sarah takes up a topic, she takes it up so seriously. But also, let me give the background that when we did that, when I did that symposium, Heart, Soul, and Spirituality, Sarah and me had a very lovely conversation. And the indigenous communities, which you're also going to speak about again here, because obviously you have spoken about it, and the leaders and the fact that they are mediators, because actually why the indigenous community is important, because colonization had its effect. So obviously the divide and rule policies that went through, obviously the whole idea was to divide. But in the indigenous communities, they still stayed as communities. I mean, I'm thinking you are working with them. I'm still an observer. Yeah. So if there's still those communities, so in a way it tells us a little bit about how communities function, because we've lost communities. So for me, obviously the stage ahead is to create communities, and then for them to bring out their mediators who are leaders, and the leaders to be mediators. So we'll do that. I mean, we are going to do it. It's not. Yes. And I'm happy about the fact that you've come out of your shell, like you said. So obviously that helps. There is a lot. There's lots you have to. You're the leader in the mediation world, which you have to take up as a role, which is very important.
It matters, doesn't it? Yeah. And I think for all mediators too, you don't have to create new communities. Where you live, there are already micro communities in the people around you, at your school community, at your exercise or your garden community. All of these places are struggling. They're struggling to know how to deal with governance. They're struggling to know the intergenerational problems of volunteering. They're struggling to know, how do I just make a good decision? What is the right decision? And they are all things that we as mediators can actually help with. And so you can't do everything because we're all busy, but you can do one thing. And one thing might be enough to create a ripple in the ocean. And you just never know.
Because the way I'm looking at it is that first people to make them realize that you are part of community, like you said. You are, it's not you coming into a space and moving out, you are part of that space. So for them to recognize that part, I think is the important thing, because obviously, like you said, communities obviously exist. But before that, let me just take up a comment that Tabitha has put, because Tabitha is based in Netherlands and she was part of that session on neurodiversity and mediation. So she says, nice and valuable appeal regarding leadership and applying mediation skills as a mindset, Sarah. So she's put that on. And Tabitha, if you can always come into the session, the Zoom link is the same for all sessions.
Please.
And she is going to be part of the session on the 4th. She's a little worried that I'm going to be the only one.
No,
Tabitha, it's okay. It's okay. Even if you're the only one, ask Sarah. It's perfectly all right.
We can survive. It's great.
Exactly. But I think the important message that you also gave was the fact that these people who are out there, who are the mediators, they don't talk about themselves. They're into that, into themselves and doing their work that they're doing. Society has to value them. Communities have to value them. So how do we bring them out? I think that by itself is a whole discussion that we need to have. But I think the aspect of the women that you spoke about. So I'm thinking, Sarah, why not another topic in the conference, women as mediators, mediators as leaders? So something like that, something on that line.
Look, there are so many powerful female mediators that I'm meeting through Zoom, and I hope you all are joining in. And if not, I'm going to tag you in afterwards. But I think that giving women a voice in this is fantastic, and certainly you've done a few things as well. So look, I'm up for it. I'd love to see some other people jump in as well, and just run a session and pull a few powerful women together and talk about, the point of difference, but also the point of value that bringing diversity to the room actually brings, because it shifts our lens around how we make decisions. It broadens it out. And when we do that, we get better decisions made.
So Tabitha's here. So she listened to our appeal. She's here now. So that's the nice thing. So that's why I tell people to join in. It's a discussion. Everyone should be part of the discussion.
The more questions, the better.
Exactly. And every viewpoint is really important. So I think that part of it is something we need to push out the message. Like you said, there's so many people out there who I want to be, who they should have to be part of the conversation. Like Tabitha has to be part of the conversation, but she doesn't come in. Tabitha, you can always come into every discussion. I don't know why you stay away. Yes, Tabitha?
Because I have other stuff to do, like cleaning my house.
Unlike me.
Kids.
I'm the only one who doesn't have anything else to do. This is all I do. Okay. No, but I think
we have to credit your wife then and your grown-up kids for taking care of you so that you can talk to us.
If you only knew how much I have to hear on that. And I've actually put it down on my website as to the situation. So you read about it there. So I've actually put it down. It's not been easy. Tabitha, it's not been easy. But I think the fact about the women that you said, there was in the symposium last year. In that symposium, there was Akshita. They've set up a platform. Young people set up a platform where obviously they would do online mediation also, and they're working a lot of things. So she said, look, we started off and we looked at these disputes. Said, our mothers could have solved this. And that was really something that struck me, that of course, these are people who are natural mediators out there. Why are we not bringing them into the fold? So that's the objective now, to bring people into the fold. So I'm going to concentrate on that, and definitely you people are obviously going to be part of that. The other two things I think, which is the keyword from the last symposium, Heart, Soul, and Spirituality, was authentic self and digging deeper. That's the important thing that you also spoke. I don't know whether you saw that with the Henry, the quest for truth in mediation. I don't know whether you saw that. It was interesting. So quest for the deeper truth, the inner truth, those are things that came up there. So definitely all that is interesting, but only thing is, you said you don't have too much time.
Yeah, I've probably got about 15 more minutes before they start pulling each other's hair out. So we got a little bit of time.
So can we give Tabitha just before you have to jump out for a couple of minutes, Tabitha. So please, you want to just share of whatever you've heard. So Sarah is always an interesting person to listen to. So what do you want, something that you want to tell us?
No, I think what really struck me, I haven't been able to follow all of the discussion, but something I really liked, I think you said it about half an hour ago, is that it can be a bit of a struggle, especially if you're a non-legal mediator, to find a way to balance being a facilitator of meaningful conversation and taking a role as a leader in your community, because it seems at odds with each other. But I agree that we have to find the balance and somehow make sure that this is not just our secret, The mediation skills are not just useful in our personal lives, and it's not just the way we make money, but it's also something that we have to give, we have to offer access to.
Yeah.
So that's something that I really liked, and that's one of the reasons that I decided to keep listening.
Yeah, thank you. Look, it's a challenge that I think we're always struggling with, busy people, particularly with young kids and things, around how do we grow our business? How do we do the business of mediation and facilitation? But also, how do we step up into that leadership role? And for me, what I've done is I've got very, very specific, I guess, products that I deliver from my business perspective. And then I've got very different products and or things I do from a leadership perspective. So so the blending of the two rarely happens, because when I take on a job, I've got a real clarity around what hat I'm wearing. And I think that that's important. And that's not to say that sometimes that hat doesn't shift, even in the middle of that work. But I'm very transparent about that process. And I think that sometimes people, it's giving them the choice. You know, as long as if I'm mediating, then I'm very clear. There's not a lot of wriggle room around what hats that I wear. But when I'm doing other types of work, as long as I'm giving people a really clear choice and showing why I think this matters, then I think that for me, that's working. But then in terms of my leadership, so I do a lot of media here in Australia, and I often get asked, why do you do this? It's certainly not for self-promotion, because for me, this is about how can I help people to have difficult conversations more effectively? So I need to reach out. I need to help make this accessible. I need to bring the language down in a way that people can connect with. And so when we're in our mediator hat, we forget the language, the acronyms, the way that we talk as mediators isn't necessarily the same as the ordinary person dealing with conflict. And as mediators, we actually bring authority to the mediation space, whether we're conscious of it or not. And so that influences how people perceive us and how they listen to us. So it comes with responsibility. And I think as those from the legal profession probably wear that responsibility unconsciously. They're not really conscious that the minutest words can shape how people make decisions. Those without a legal background are probably more conscious of that. But the challenge then is, what do we do with this in the outside world? How do we make this, how do we promote peacemaking to the everyday person? And so it is about us learning to talk differently. It's about us remembering the acquired knowledge that we have and saying, this is a real blessing we've had to gain these skills and experience. But it means nothing if we can't talk to the ordinary person about that. And so doing media for me has taught me how to talk differently. And it's taught me to tell stories in a way that is a little bit light sometimes. Certainly the work in communities, we do a lot of storytelling. We talk about nature, we talk about the environment, we use those sort of stories to help connect people with conflict. And I think that's as much leadership as it is around the actions that you do. So each of us, I guess it's about finding your own confidence to hold that space, and your language will flow from that place of grounding.
Can I add something? Because I think, as you very eloquently put, Sarah, you've gained experience in how to talk differently by being engaged in different sectors. And I think for those mediators that are feeling that being involved in nonprofits or in community projects as just a way of giving back, they are missing the fact that they are also gaining valuable skills.
Yes.
And it may even make you more attractive. That should not be the reason you do the things you do. Yeah. But I think it is a win-win.
Yeah.
I think because I've been a community mediator unpaid for, I think, over 10 years now, I have been getting certain cases from court because they know I know how to talk to landlords and tenants in acrimonious disputes, because I've been doing that for 10 years as a nonprofit, and I haven't volunteered because I thought it was increasing my status as a mediator or it was commercially attractive, but I think there is a benefit I learn from every case I'm involved in. I learn from every project I dedicate time to.
Yeah.
Whether I get paid or not, I may get paid in experiences or in new stories to tell, or in people getting to know me, and then later on, if they have to employ someone, that they will think of me. So I think that that's an additional reason why you should choose to be active in community.
I think that's right.
Projects.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I guess I'm also, having done many volunteer and free hours over the years helps you get to where you were. I think I'm also conscious that often it's the women that do it for free, and because we use it as an opportunity, and whereas the men will often go in and negotiate pay for it. So as I've grown in my profession, I'm conscious of that. I'm also conscious that sometimes government departments refer mediation between themselves and a not-for-profit. And the people sitting at the room from government are all getting paid, right? But the volunteers aren't. And as a facilitator or mediator, you're often not getting paid also. So I started saying, hey, if you really want to do this and invest in this process properly, then you should be paying me for this. Now, I won't charge you top dollar, but I'm going to charge you something so that I'm valued and you're valuing the process. And so I guess part of my own leadership too was saying, if I don't speak out about this, and it is unfair because they're assuming that your wealth of knowledge and experience will just be given for free. And so then you don't change the system, which should be paying you for it. So it's about, how do we retrain them, right, to recognize the value of this? And you don't have to pay us those big barrister rates, but some payment recognizes the value and the worth of what we're doing. And
alternatively, it also allows you to choose what you do for free and not. If you have enough money to pay your kids, because I wouldn't pay, I wouldn't work for free for a government agency. No, I dedicate my time to a volunteering service, and it's known what we do and what we don't do. And then I have my commercial practice on the side, but by being paid in my commercial practice, I can afford to spend maybe 25-30% of my time talking to students, coaching people that are thinking of entering the trade, by being active in student mediation competitions as an expert judge, which is great, but you don't get paid.
No, that's right.
But
you do it.
I absolutely agree. You should get paid for certain things, because it helps change the mindset that you're actually delivering a service.
I'll cut you off right here because of the fact that these are topics we have taken up and you have not been part of it. We said mediation in the court system because that's one area where I see that people don't get paid. The mediators don't get paid, but everyone. So we have to have that part of that discussion about who pays. There's another discussion on that, on who pays. All these things that what you're saying are so important. So it's not just making a statement here. You actually have to take it up as a topic and let's discuss it, because I've tried to take them up. What you've been saying is exactly what I've been saying about one, you said about the fact that you are doing this, maybe whatever, you are volunteering somewhere, but you get recognized. So I've been telling people that come together, we'll put it out. We'll identify those with the mediator mindset. You work with them. Those matters in the community you can help them in, but when the more complex matters come in with your experience, you will be the one who's identified as a mediator. That's exactly what I've been trying to set up as a system, which I'm going to take up a little more seriously maybe, and we're pushing. So I've actually focused, I know my focus there, but I just wanted Sarah to take us through that indigenous community part of it, the leaders that you have seen there. But that's actually something that you have actual hands-on experience on. So please.
So this notion of certainly in Arnhem Land with the Yolngu communities up there, they don't distinguish the role of leader from mediator, because part of the leader's responsibility is to know how to navigate conflict, because as a community, certainly it's more of a collective community as opposed to individualistic. So it's very much important to understand where you fit in within the society and the community, what your relationship responsibilities are about. And when something goes wrong, the leader's role is to help mend or reweave those broken mats so that there is unity and harmony for the whole community, for the whole collective. And it's I guess a part of that collectivist culture that shapes differently how they make decisions, certainly, and how they deal with conflict. So their leaders must be comfortable with navigating difference and conflict. They have very clear structures on how they resolve disputes at different levels, but the leader themselves must be very good at peacemaking, because this, as a community, it was about survival, right? Back in the days. And so if there wasn't peace within the community, they weren't able to survive in very harsh conditions. So the leaders were mediators because they were trying to resolve disputes, but they were also trying to prevent them and create healing afterwards. So in my experience up there, the dispute resolution process is about identifying what the problems are, negotiating a solution, reaching a resolution, and then conducting healing that allows everyone to move forward. And I think as a Western model of mediation, we often miss that healing element. And so, for me, their leadership really inspires me, and it challenges me to be better as a mediator and better as a leader in general, because I can see, and I'm learning, I know so little, but I learn every time I engage around what it means to hold leadership with grace and hold leadership in a way that brings people together, that weaves a broken community or family back together for the greater good. And that, I think, for me, those lessons as a society are so critical for all of us moving forward, because I don't think we'll get to survive these challenges if we are divided. And so I think that learning some of those gentle approaches, gentle when needed as a leader in conflict, but hard and harsh also when needed. It's a balance. It's about finding balance. And it's not saying one size fits all the time. It's recognizing as leaders and as conflict management professionals, we have to be attuned to and listening on so many levels when we have a vision of what we're working towards.
But Tabitha, can we get some experience from the Netherlands about communities more, I think, maybe functioning in a more traditional manner, and we can find some leaders there who are mediators and mediators who are leaders? Can we find something there?
First, I want to say holding leadership with grace. That's such a wonderful sentence. That I'm going to take that with me. Thank you for that, Sarah.
My absolute pleasure. It resonates for me. Sometimes these things happen, but it just, I think that's what we need, right?
It is. So that was one that really stood out for me.
I think what I'm going to have a whole series on Sarah's words of wisdom. Then Ken Cloak's words of wisdom, and Tabitha's words of wisdom.
We'll
take clips out. We'll take clips out of all these sessions, and I'm going to put that out. I have that in mind, but where is the time to do it? Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, we may have a calendar that just an inspiring quote for people with a mediator mindset every day. And,
but I want to take it out from clips from the videos and actually put it out, and that's something that I thought that you people would tell me, and you tell me, okay, from this minute to this minute, please take it out and put it out. Is really, like you just said, what you just said, you picked up one sentence, but that's a very important sentence. So
it was straight to my heart. Loved it. I think in the Netherlands is a pretty flat country and very tiny. We have 17 million people living here, but I think after Bangladesh, or we're the most populated country in the world, we don't have so much indigenous leaders. We have some church communities or some religious communities, and also migrant communities, I think, where traditional mediators don't have any standing. So it is important for those communities that often experience a disadvantage or vulnerability in how they are perceived by the rest of the Netherlands, to have their own peacemakers. I think the person that I'm waiting for might be at the door, but so those are voices that we need to hear, that we need to go look for, because I am a bit appalled, even if I look around a mediator conference or a mediator association meeting, that most of us are white. Well, I'm not over 50, but I'm in my 40s, and most of us are over a certain age, and most of us are legally trained and ethnically Dutch. And while our community, our country is very diverse, so there's certainly something that needs to be done in order to get perhaps more traditional ways of peacemaking, or just different voices on how to how to act as a leader, how to act as a mediator, how to reconcile, and also particularly something I really liked and I'm going to contemplate on is the part of healing. Healing being the natural closing of ending a conflict. Yeah. So just having a resolution and having it on paper, the real work to work through the emotions and have a sustainable relationship later on, or at least to be able to greet each other if you still run into each other is the healing part.
Yeah.
So I think we might be able to learn a lot from other communities, not being the legal, white, ethnically Dutch, westernized minds that are now dominating the stage.
Kavita, you have to go out and identify those people, because let's bring them into the discussion, and we'll find out from people who are their users, the user experience. When you hear that experience, you know that they're actually doing a wonderful job. So let's bring them out. That's what the idea is. I mean, the idea is to go down and people with the mediator mindset to bring them out. And people will be happy to see them. Yep. That's the focus. Yes, you want to say something?
Thank you so much. I have to answer to the door. Thank you for just letting me jump in for 10 minutes. It was a pleasure.
Loved it. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Thank you for coming, Kavita. Always a pleasure. See you. So I think what we need to do is we have to, of course, I can understand that your son's not well and you have to go. So perfectly. We should end it right now. But the only thing is we have to fix the time for the other things that have come out from the discussion. Women aspect of it needs to be discussed. Obviously, we've been discussing the role of women in the mediation world. We've discussed that part in that earlier session that we had. But let's look at the fact that people, the women who are not part of the mediation world, but we know they have a mediator mindset. And I feel I have my own theory on this. I always say that those parties are like children for the mediator. So mother has the best, those maternal instincts. And I think they are wonderful mediators. So I think we have to bring that aspect out.
Yeah.
So we have to fix the time, Sarah, during the
I
conference.
will go on the search for some of these inspiring women and see if I can coordinate them onto a video conference.
You have the slots available on the sheet, on the schedule. Just tell me on so and so date we have to discuss this, because I think that's an important discussion.
That'd be great.
So Sarah, thank you very much. Wonderful talking to you, and we have to continue. It doesn't matter, you want a weekly feature or a monthly feature. No, you have to be there, because like I said, these voices that you people in your work, yes, you're doing your work and you need to, of course, your children are growing up and everything. But on the other end, the fact that you can actually change the way mediation is looked at and the direction that is going, that's the idea of the conference. Let's put it in a certain direction and other people will take it forward, and you're always there to mentor the process. But that's the important part.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting others to carry the journey with us. I think that's the more people, the better. So thank you again for the opportunity to talk. I would love feedback for anyone watching this on the playback. Jump on to LinkedIn and send me a message. Give me your thoughts on this conversation, because I think the two of us would love to hear your questions and your ideas and your different opinions about this, because let's keep this conversation going. Thank you for the opportunity, Vikram.
But let me also put down, as Samson has put a comment. Thanks, very informative forum. Of course, he's spoken about the mediators not getting paid. That's the other sessions in the conference. And if you want to participate, Samson, please get in touch and please be part of the discussion. So thank you, Sarah. And
thank you.
Seeing you very soon. You're coming up. Another session is coming up.
I know.
You know that. Yes, you know that.
Yeah, I do.